Hey dudes, and welcome back to The Bands. As always, I am your host, The Bands, and here we are. We finally made it to the end of another week, and I hope you all are enjoying your Saturday. I do apologize for taking the week off. Unfortunately, due to some health reasons and some technological reasons, I wasn't able to upload, but finally we're back in working business, so that of course means it is time for our first and unfortunately final whiff for the week, so let's just get right into it. And of course, to start off, as always, we have our headline for the day. And in our headline for the day, let's talk about the Burberry 24-hour capsule collection, shall we? So let's talk about what led up to this capsule collection. To begin with, as long as you haven't been living under a rock for the last couple months, you'll know that Burberry is now helmed by ex-creative designer of Givenchy, Riccardo Tisci. And after just recently redesigning the logo for the brand, as well as introducing a pattern to go along with it, it was finally time for Tisci to show off his first collection underneath the Burberry brand. But before that, he did want to garner a little bit more hype to go along with it, and that's how this capsule came about. And really, what better way to garner a little bit of hype for your brand than with a super exclusive and limited time capsule such as this? And not only was this capsule online in only two specific places, those being on the Burberry Instagram page and the Burberry WeChat page, but it was only available in one physical location, and that was the Burberry flagship in London. And as if that alone wasn't limited enough, as I had said before, this wasn't limited to a number of actual pieces, but rather a time. It was only available for literally a day, only 24 hours. So then what about the collection itself? Well, I think Tisci did a very nice job here of not only adding his personal style and flair to a lot of these pieces, but also introducing a bunch of pieces that even the people who enjoyed Burberry prior to his tenure here would enjoy as well. And I'm sure some of you are wondering, well, what does that mean? Well, for starters, let's look at what I would consider some of the more historical pieces. And that would be, of course, if you know anything about Burberry, they're most renowned for, aside from their pattern check, their overcoats, their jackets, and things such as that. So for this collection, what Tisci decided on was trench coats, because obviously how can you get more classic than that? He didn't go too crazy on the colors here, he just kept a standard black and tan, but he did give a couple different styles, as well as adding some nice little aesthetics here and there to make them feel a little bit more luxurious, and mainly in the form of gold buttons on some of these pieces. But then moving on to the styles that are more his personal preference, we see a lot more of what people would consider, for the lack of a better term, a much more luxury streetwear aesthetic. We see obviously t-shirts, we see hoodies, and different jackets such as bombers, all in a range of different materials which he loved to use, such as leather or neoprene or even mesh in some of these pieces. We also saw a lot of logoing and branding in this collection, which comes at absolutely no surprise to me, mainly because I had already predicted it in previous videos talking about Burberry and Riccardo Tisci, although the only thing that really did surprise me was the fact that the pattern that he came up with, we didn't see it used in an all-over print in a t-shirt here like I expected, although if any of you had seen the runway show since, you'll see that he actually did use it on a couple other shirts, so I'd say the t-shirt's only really just a matter of time. So all in all, how do I feel about this capsule? Well, in all honesty, I think Tisci actually did a pretty good job here. From just a business standpoint alone, I think Riccardo did a very nice job at not only hyping up this capsule, but using all that hype and attention to push it toward his show as well. And even though in my opinion, this collection definitely feels a lot more Tisci than it does Burberry, kind of in the same way that the new Celine collection definitely feels a lot more slim-on, I think by including those more historical elements, those trench coats, will do a very nice job of appeasing the more Burberry elite out there who might not necessarily always agree with his style preferences. which is really the exact opposite of what Eddie did with his Celine collection by really just throwing caution to the wind. And for that, I really do have to give Ricardo a lot of respect here. I think if this capsule is kind of a litmus test for what is to come out of Burberry, not just his own designs, but his working with really the heritage of the company, I think we're in for a real treat into what could possibly be a very new and very exciting era for Burberry. And now just for a quick update, as some of you may have heard earlier, I just said headlines singular instead of headlines plural. And the reason for that is because from now on, I'm only going to be doing one headline a day. The reason being is because this is called What's Happening in Fashion. And even though, yes, the headlines I talk about, of course, revolve around fashion, the whole point of this channel and these videos was more to talk about new and exciting fashion brands and upcoming lookbooks and things along those lines. So if I'm taking up over half of the video talking about these headlines, these things that are happening in the industry, then I take away from the main point of these videos, which is, of course, new and exciting fashion. So now, with all of that said, let's move on to our art stories for the day. And first up, Hypebeast sat down for an interview with, plus did a nice overview of the newest exhibit from Japanese artist Mr. So if you're a big fan of that pop art feel, and especially that super flat feel, then I would definitely watch this and check out some of the images. Then in some sculpture news, as some of you may have remembered a couple of months ago when Kaz got some sculptures permanently installed on top of some skyscrapers in China, well, now it is finally Parra's turn, where he got his Give Up Tomato permanently installed onto a building in Amsterdam. So if you're interested in seeing some more photos of that, I would definitely check this out. And lastly, some photos finally arrived of Todd James's newest exhibit that is currently showing in Belgium. So obviously, if you can't make it out there and love some of his work, I definitely check out some of these photos as well. Alright, and now finally moving on into our fashion section for the day. First up, brand Dickies subline Dickies Life showed off their fall winter 2018 lookbook, and I think it's just super well done. So let's get this out of the way first. What exactly is Dickies Life? Well, as I said before, it is actually a Dickies subline, which is much more colorful, much more interesting, and much more streetwear driven than the original Dickies line. Think of it in a very similar way to Carhartt Work in Progress is to Carhartt. The main difference, however, between these two brands, that being Carhartt Work in Progress and the Dickies Life, is that Carhartt is sold worldwide, whereas Dickies Life is a European exclusive. Yeah, I have no fucking idea why either. But now, actually moving on to the lookbook itself, it is just a really solid lookbook overall. As I said before, we have a very colorful lookbook here with some very nice uses of color pop as well as different types of patterns as well. We see not only plaids but stripes and even some camo here and there. We also see a whole range of different materials and textiles as well. Everything from your cottons and your denims all the way up to your suedes and your wools. And these silhouettes here are ones that you've come to know and love from Dickies, just slimmed down and tapered a little bit here and there, giving them just a little bit more stylish flair than what you'd expect from the workwear brand. And even though these pieces are a little bit on the more expensive side, nothing breaking the bank by any means. Just between the nice materials and the quality that you expect from Dickies, overall, just a really fantastic collection, and I couldn't possibly be madder that this is only a European exclusive. Then I wanted to try and talk about the newest lookbook from 40s and Shorties, but I just really can't. And the reason why is because it's just another one of those copy-paste brands, really. Everything in this collection I've seen done before by a plethora of different companies, and really there's nothing new, interesting, or exciting about it. But if you are a fan of this generation of streetwear, I would at least check it out. But for everybody else, hard pass. Then brand Wisdom showed off their Fall/Winter 2018 collection, and I'd have to say this is a pretty solid lookbook here. For those of you who don't know, Wisdom is a Taiwan-based brand that really focuses heavily on those more contemporary styles and those techwear styles as well, usually either cycling in between the two or even mixing them here and there, as we see in this lookbook as well. And even though the techwear here is by no means extraordinary or completely over the top in my opinion, there are some very nice, solid, and very well-made quality pieces among this collection. But for me, the main reason I'm talking about this collection, and in my opinion the main highlight of this collection, is the use of color here. For somebody that has gone on record time and time again advocating against the use of color in most techwear, I think Wisdom does a very nice job here of proving me wrong. Sure, the colors aren't anything really super crazy. We still see mainly those darker tones here, as well as the camos that you'd expect pattern-wise, but there are some other elements in here, such as some contrast stitching, or even some stripes or other all-over prints here and there, which in my opinion actually work very well throughout this lookbook. Maybe it's because they're not trying to stand out with these colors or patterns, or maybe it's just somehow that the aesthetics of some of these tech pieces just work well with them. But either way, I think as far as the colors and the prints go in this lookbook, I think Wisdom did a fantastic job here. So if you are a fan of techwear, especially a little bit more on the laid back side, and we're looking for a little bit more color to add to your wardrobe, then this is definitely worth checking out. And lastly, Wan Studios showed off their inaugural collection, their Spring/Summer 2019 lookbook, and this is some really inspirational stuff. For as small as this lookbook is, the amount of quality in some of these pieces really packs a punch that makes up for it. Once again, just like with our prior lookbook, we see a very nice blending of contemporary styles and technical ideas, although this time it's much more on the experimental side. And honestly, I think it actually works very well here. I think that kind of futuristic tone they're going for in the silhouetting and the pattern cutting of these pieces makes a lot of sense, especially when you add in those techwear elements, and really makes this collection, for as small as it is, feel super cohesive. I really do wish I could talk more about this lookbook, but there's really not that much more to talk about. As I said, it's a very small collection, and once again, this is Wan, the designer's inaugural collection as well. So all I can really say here is just a absolutely stellar job by Wan, and I'm really excited to see what the next collection brings. Alright guys, and finally with that, let's move on to our articles for the day. Dye Workwear put out another fantastic post, mainly going over a bunch of different ideas, talking first about the history of men's fashion, then going on to talk more about the kind of disappearance of the middle of the fashion market, and then even going on to progress further about how niche fashions have kind of begun to dominate the space as opposed to these all-over cohesive fashion companies. A very interesting article if you're a fan of menswear or even history of fashion in general, and definitely worth the read. Then Hypebeast sat down with Mastermind Japan and world founder Masaaki Homma to talk more about kind of what he's doing now and a little bit about the history of his two brands. So if you're interested in learning a little bit more about him, I'd definitely check this out. And lastly, Highsnobiety did a very nice, albeit on the short side, overview of many of the brands out there doing sustainable denim. So if you're a big fan of the ethics of fashion or just sustainability in general, especially much more on the workwear side, definitely give this a look at as well. Alright guys, and with that we finally reached the end of our first and only WHIF for the week. I hope you guys have enjoyed, and as always, if you want to read any of the articles I talked about today or see any images from lookbooks I wasn't able to include, I've linked everything in the description down below. And if you are new here, then welcome. We do these what's happening in fashion videos usually twice a week, at the beginning and the end of the week, as well as another occasional video here or there. So if any of that sounds interesting to you, feel free to subscribe. Otherwise, if you just have any questions, comments, concerns, or even just want to talk fashion at all, feel free to hit me up in the comments. I am always willing to talk fashion. And thank you guys all once again for watching these videos and supporting my content. I hope you all have a great rest of your weekend, and as always, until next time.